All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gavin from Chinese Medicine Education and China Books in Sydney. And today I'm here with Livia Kohn. So Livia is one of the world's foremost Daoist scholars. She's Professor Emerita of Religion and East Asian Studies at Boston University, and she's been the author as well as editor of lots of different texts on Taoism and cultivation. And so we're really lucky to have her here today to do this little introductory talk, but we've also got her coming to Sydney and she'll be doing a workshop with us. So that'll be Saturday, the 5th of April to Sunday, the 6th of April. And that workshop will be on Daoist ways of enhancing vitality. So, I mean, as practitioners, we all know the value of practices like Qigong, breath work, cultivation. So it'll be really interesting to get Livia's experience and knowledge in that. And it will be a practical workshop as well. So she'll be going through that information, but also taking us through the practices. So that should be really good. So if you're able to join us for that, I'm going to just include the link to more information in the chat group chat group. So have a look at that when you get a chance. So I'm just admitting these extra people coming in. Really nice turnout today. Very good. All right. So during the presentation, if anyone has any questions for Livia about the presentation or about the upcoming workshop in April, please just pop it into the chat and we'll cover all and any questions at the end when we get to that. All right, I'll hand it over to you, Livia.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm hearing that you have nice fall starting weather in Sydney. I live on a farm about an hour and a half north of New York City, and we're still in the deepest winter. Our temperatures are below freezing. There's about 4 or 5 inches of snow and ice on the ground. So I'll be looking forward to seeing a place that has no snow for a change. So today we're talking about the basics of longevity techniques and the Taoist body, which is also the topic. The specific techniques is the topic of the workshop in April. And the works that this comes back to are 2 books. One is an edited volume called Daoist Body Cultivation that has a general introduction to what the Daoist body is, and then presentations by several different scholars on various kinds of techniques. There's a thing on Chinese medicine in there, materials on breathing, Tai Chi, internal energy guiding, dietary things. So it's a nice volume. And the other one is a book I wrote, which is called A Source Book in Chinese Longevity. It's a extensive collection of original sources on the different longevity techniques, and they can all be found on my publishing company, which is called 3 Pines Press. So if you are interested in looking at them in more detail, they have like excerpts on the website, and there's a way to order these things. Now, the longevity techniques in Chinese is called yang sheng, which means nourishing life. And there's a number of different techniques that come into this. The more personal exercises or practices are breathing techniques, where you oxygenize your system and cleanse the body. Physical, or what we call healing exercises, where you strengthen the joints and muscles. And then a more meditative kind of practice called energy guiding, where you're taking, visualizing, or feeling energy moving through the body and release emotions. And then there's more interactive practices that connect you to the outside world, such as diet, where you're taking certain foods or drinks that are served to heal and to enhance your energy system. which ultimately leads to a practice called bigu, which means avoiding grain, which is a form of fasting, temporary fasting. Then there are sexual practices in the Taoist tradition where you're connecting emotionally and physically to other people in the so-called bedchamber arts. And then there's the relation to space and time in geomancy or feng shui, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, and time where you use the I Ching and other fortune-telling type techniques that give you a sense of what's the best time to do this. So this is like the whole spectrum. The workshop will focus on the personal practices, especially breathing, exercise, energy guiding, and some meditative practices, and also look at some relationships to the outside world in terms of virtues that are important in the Taoist tradition to enhance one's longevity and one's well-being. The interactive practices would be a separate workshop, which we're not doing at this time. Levels of Daoist cultivation can be divided into three, and they are successive. The first level is healing, so you make sure that your qi in your system, your vital energy flows harmoniously, and a lot of people come into the practices because they have issues. And so their chi flow is not right. There's a blockage. There's too fast of a flow. They have medical issues, and other medicine types don't help. They start practicing qigong or tai chi or some Taoist meditations, and lo and behold, their energy starts to get more harmonious. So your healing is your first step. And then longevity, which is what we're focusing on during the workshop, is you're using these particular self-applied techniques to enhance your health. And I should add that a lot of the healing practices is like you're going to a medical practitioner to help you, and you start with acupuncture, massages, herbs. People prescribe certain dietary techniques, and then you also do some of the exercises and the breathing practices for healing. And then immortality is the third step, which is the advanced level of Taoist cultivation, which grows out of the longevity level, where you're refining yourself to a higher, more subtle energy level, which in the Taoist tradition is called spirit. And a lot of the meditation techniques, you may have wondered already why I'm not listing meditation as one of the longevity techniques. That's because, yes, there's certain meditative practices, such as a very basic calming of the mind, that is helpful for longevity, but the bulk of meditative practices in the Taoist tradition are geared towards a very high level of longevity and the really spiritual transformation. And there you have all kinds of inspired chanting, visualization of deities, ecstatic excursions to the stars, Buddhist-inspired insight meditation, things like sitting in oblivion, where everything falls away and you enter this sort of very open space kind of state, and then internal alchemy, things of that sort. And that again, I have written books on these things. I have a book called Meditation Works that talks about all these practices in comparative perspective, but it would be a different workshop. Now, longevity is situated between medicine and religion, and our first documentation is in medical manuscripts, in manuscripts that were found in tombs. They go back to the 2nd century BC. The picture you have here on the left is the Daoyin Tu, which is the chart of Daoyin, of exercises, and Daoyin literally means guiding and stretching. And on the top left, you see the original chart that was unearthed and found. And then on the bottom, you see the reconstructed version with the colors, and it's a total of 44 figures. And they have a little caption. Most of the captions cannot be read anymore, but in some places we do have the caption still. And you can see how they all wear slightly different garb and how they all do some different kinds of exercises. And there's another text that was also found in a tomb, goes back to the same about period, 2nd century BC, called the Yin Shu, the pulling book or book of stretches, that is in prose, and that describes a lot of the practices that are depicted in this chart. So this is our earliest documentation of these practices, which doesn't mean that they didn't exist before that, but which means that that's as far back as they go in terms of documentation. And they are part of the medical tradition at that point. And they, especially the Yin Shu, the pulling book, has describes, if you have, such and such an injury or such and such a condition, you should do these type of exercises. So it's for recovery. So it's sort of like what we call physical therapy in the West. People have either by bad habits or because of an accident or because of some other situation, they have a problem in certain parts of their body, and they get these exercises to get back to take recovery. But then very similar exercises can also be used to strengthen the body and the immune system, so you prevent. So the Yang longevity techniques, nourishing life practices, are not just for recovery, but also for prevention. And then they found that if people continue to practice these things, and of course, like let's say you do a forward bend in order to strengthen your hamstrings and your back of your body, and in the beginning, it's very difficult and it's painful and you can only go so far. But then you sort of get to a state where it's sort of okay. And then you get even stronger and you can actually place your hands on the ground and you can really stretch through your legs and you can expand more. So you use the movement is the same, but the ability to perform it changes as you get stronger and healthier, and the impact on the body is different. So while the movement may be the same, it's recovery to begin, becomes prevention. Say, hey, I don't want this injury again. I better behave like, keep my body strength. And then it's like, hey, it feels really good. Why don't I enhance this and strengthen myself? So you get to a higher level of empowerment. So that's longevity techniques. And then once you get to that level where you're talking about empowerment, a lot of people are looking at, I really feel this very healthy person. And then they move into a more spiritual kind of level. And then the Daoist practitioners adopt this. So in the Daoist tradition, they're already healthy and they're doing prevention, but they're using these techniques for health enhancement and for increasing the quality of their vital energy. If you want to look at a picture of just how medicine and cultivation connect, the Taoist vision is that when you're born, you are given a blueprint of how long you will live in this body, provided you don't abuse it in major ways and you don't do anything fancy in terms of enhancement. So if you're sort of living an ordinary kind of life, then let's say you're scheduled to live for 80 or 90 years. But then if you're abusing the body, or you have injuries, or you're living in an environment that's not conducive, then your energy gets lower and you end up having a disease or symptoms. And then medicine comes and brings you back to your original line, your original trajectory. And then from there, you practice cultivation and you move up more, and then you can extend your life. So whereas if you stay below the threshold, below your original trajectory, you may end up dying early. So as you practice the Yang Sheng techniques, the longevity practices, you can extend your life. And then in immortality, the difference is that you would transform into a pure spirit being and not only live very long in this body, but then rather than dying and having a complete dissolution, you would continue as a spirit entity in the other world. We can think of cultivation as like a gardening kind of thing. So it's like cultivating yourself is like you're working on wilderness to make a plot. You need the good soil to transform the vegetation. You have to have a supportive climate and regular nurturing, like a regular rhythm of planting, and you need to work with ongoing productivity. And so in the same way, you start with a body that is like ready to be transformed. You say, and it's very, one of the things even the philosophical ancient texts emphasize is the first step is to recognize that improvement can be done, that there is need to get better, that yes, I'm sort of okay, or maybe I'm in pain. I really need to make some changes here. So your body becomes your field. And then you bring the supportive climate in where you put yourself in a situation that is supportive for cultivation. And a lot of the traditional texts recommend that you, at least for a period, leave your ordinary life and do like a retreat type thing. But even if you stay in your ordinary life, you set yourself up with fewer temptations and fewer distractions, and you set up a certain time every day or a half a day every week that you can really dedicate. So you create a climate for your cultivation. And it's very important to practice regularly. It doesn't necessarily have to be every day, but every second day, fairly regular practice, and to get a good rhythm. So the longevity practices become part of who you are in your daily life, and then that will continue to give good results. The ultimate vision is to attain optimal health, which is in a lot of Western systems, Western thinking, or you go to a Western type practitioner, health is defined as the absence of symptoms, or you're measuring within certain parameters. Your blood pressure is like this, your heart rate is like this, your body temperature is like this, your digestion is like this. So they have certain measurable parameters that you fit into. And then it's time and again, it happened to me a number of times, and I know other people, they don't feel quite right. There's a certain symptom, there's something happening, but they're like, you go to a Western doctor and they say, we measure this, and we have no real, we can't help you. So as far as we're concerned, you're healthy. So their definition of health is sort of limited. In this Chinese system, optimal health is the best possible functioning of body and mind, going much beyond the absence of symptoms. It manifests as the consistent adaptation and interaction in yourself and with your environment, and it's not a battlefield. So that's a big deal. A lot of when you look at Western medicine, it's the war against cancer. It's you take a painkiller. There's a lot of war type, battle type, fighting type images, and when you have a symptom in the Western system, a lot of times it's something to push away, to suppress, to get rid of. It's the enemy. And this is really different. Your body is your friend, and you need to be a friend to your body. And when your body gives you a certain indication, it's a way of the body communicating with you. And so you find that certain things you eat, or certain times you do things, or certain practices you do, your body starts to feel lighter or more harmonious, or there's less pain, or then, oh, okay, so that's what the body wants. So a lot of it is engaging with the body in a very positive way. That's very important. And then also, it's not just the body within one person, it's nature, it's other people, it's the universe. And the individual is understood as this dynamic part of this dynamic field. It's a holographic, sort of quantum type understanding of the universe as an interactive field of many different energies and activities, and you're part of this. And so your whole interactive structure is positive and is enriching. And so your body, mind, self, and your connection to the universe and to others is elevated to a very high state of wellness. Um, in the body mind in the Chinese system is very clearly distinct in terminology. So, and I do have a whole talk on this, different terms for body and mind on different levels of cultivation. There's a term you use for body and mind in a very rigorous ritual, very limited, restrictive setting. There's a body and mind pair term for ordinary life. There's a body and mind term for more advanced cultivation levels. And then there's a cosmic term. So there are four different terms. However, we do not have in the Chinese system this radical opposition, this radical conflict between body and mind. We see them as a continuum, and it's an energetic continuum. So both the body and the mind are forms of vital energy, of qi, and the mind and also the spirit, which is the pure power that underlies the mind, is a very fast moving and very vibrant and very intense and very pure, soft, subtle form of qi, whereas the body is still qi, but it's a little more dense, it's a little slower moving, it's more tangible, it's a little more intense. So you have a continuity between the two, which of course people realize even today in Western medicine. Is the whole psychosomatic dimension of things is very clearly obvious, and people understand that big emotions like anger have a very negative effect on your physical system. But in the Chinese system, it's built in. That's your baseline. You don't have to overcome this kind of thinking. And so, for example, they would find it very detrimental what these people are doing here, where they're running on a treadmill and there's a lot of noise going on, and they're distracting their mind with television. And so, you really want to engage when you're doing a physical practice. You want your mind calm, you want a quiet setting. There may be some very gentle kind of music, although a lot of Tai Chi practitioners don't think music is a good idea at all. But you want very focused, you want your mind on whatever it is the body is doing, and you want a positive attitude, like a nurturing, supportive attitude, and deep breathing. So breath, mind, and body need to be integrated. You also, the other extreme is people engaging their minds, totally ignoring their bodies. So they're like was on their computers with bad food and bad posture. And you don't want to do that either. So as you're doing mental tasks, you still want to be aware of your physical presence because your mind is so much part of your body. And so we do have the diseases are understood as being part of the field. So you want to be careful about toxins. You want to be careful about EMFs, which are high frequency devices that may interfere with things. And so you want to see your health, or the understanding of health and body and mind is as part of this integrated field. And so you want to have both of physical practices, but also mental opening. So your self-image as a practitioner is like a gardener in charge of managing a plot, the owner of a beloved pet. So it's like, you think of your body as like your beloved doggy, and you need to groom like you're grooming the dog, you're feeding the dog, you're petting the dog, you're walking the dog, and then at some point you say no to the dog and make sure he behaves. You put certain restrictions, but by and large, you love your dog, and your attention is a positive thing. So in the same way, rather than seeing the body as the enemy, you see it as a good partner. And the interaction is continuous. The more you practice longevity techniques, the more you can become aware of any kind of imbalances. And so that's one of the things that is really the most powerful effect of this practice, is that you learn these techniques and you apply them in your life, and you find a very nice, smooth, harmonious baseline of your body and mind. And when things happen, then, and they do, then, you're getting a little bit off your baseline, but then you come back to it. And if there's a point where you're getting a little bit more off your baseline and you feel a little unsettled, or you feel irritations, or you feel something imbalanced in your system, you rebalance it. So rather than waiting and pushing it away and say, oh yeah, I'm going to ignore this, and then, a few months later you're really sick, you start by, I feel that there's an imbalance, and then, well, let me just take like a few hours off here, or let me just, not go out tonight, but just stay home and be quiet and meditate, or have a nice warm cup of tea or something. And you find ways, and the practices are geared to give you the ability to balance the whole system, and or very specific aspects of it. So the body, as we already said, is the dynamic aspect of the mind, society, universe interaction. And then the Chinese understand the development of conditions in this sequence of signs, symptoms, and syndromes. And so syndrome is something we would call like a real disease. You're really, really sick. Symptoms are things where you're really not functioning well. It's you still wouldn't call yourself totally sick, but you have a big headache, or you have some tightness, or you have stomach upsets, or something that is really interfering with your life. And signs are the first indications that something is wrong, these little markers of imbalance. And there's an ancient saying in the ancient medical literature that says the best physician is the one who recognizes the trajectory, the potential for disease way before any kind of symptom ever appears. And by the same token, the goal is to get to a point where you see the signs and you deal with them before they ever develop into symptoms. So there's a dimension of health here that is possible and very practical, and that is highly recommendable. So you internally sense more than you externally measure, because a lot of times those signs where you, inhabiting your body and being yourself, realize that something is off, do nowhere near appear on the kinds of charts and with the help of the measuring systems that we have in the Western system. Although an acupuncturist, a Chinese trained physician or pharmacology person who does the pulse diagnosis and they look at your tongue, they may be able to recognize signs before they turn into symptoms. In the Western tendency, if you look at literature in the West about these practices, and I have one of my graduate students wrote a dissertation on breathing, and she was appalled to find that the vast majority in Western kind of literature only looks at pathologies. Breathing only comes in when you can't do it. Like they have a lot about different lung conditions, emphysema, things like this. There's a lot of material on asthma, but nobody ever actually talks about breathing, which we all do constantly. And there are huge differences in the quality of breathing, the length of the breath, the depth of the breath, the location, where do we breathe, the kind of ways we breathe, nostril or through the mouth, and so on and so forth. And so in the Asian system, we really emphasize good quality breathing, and we modify it depending on time, depending on conditions. And we really do not have that kind of thing. That's where Western practitioners can learn a lot from the East. On the exercise level, there's physical therapy. As I mentioned earlier, people work out in gyms, but the tendency is there's very loud music or there's television, it's distracting. And also they tend to be, while there's nothing wrong if your body is healthy, to really use it vigorously and make it sweat and get some good muscle action going. There is the more gentle exercise that nowadays, of course, is being done in yoga a lot. Is really very helpful and an important counterpart to very vigorous exercise. And we don't really have anything like internal energy guiding in the West. There's some psychological tendencies where people talk about releasing anger or working with fear. And then the same for the more interactive forms of practices. Diet is more for slimming, and there's the food pyramid that we have over here. Sex, again, is mentioned mostly negatively, worrying about diseases. In fengshui is very often seen as irrelevant, and sometimes maybe they talk about toxins like asbestos and things, but they really don't talk about the energy of space. And any kind of divination or time, more subtle understanding of time is considered spooky. Now, the body vision, moving on into the more Daoist body here, from the longevity techniques, the body vision is the body is a replica of heaven and earth. And the Chinese understanding of heaven and earth is that the heaven is round, it's like a dome. And so the head is like the dome of the body, it's like matches heaven. And the feet are sort of in a square type of pattern, and the earth itself is understood to be square, so the feet are matching earth. And so a lot of qigong practice, the very first thing you do is you visualize or you feel yourself connected to heaven and earth. You open your arms, you bring energy in from the heaven, and you open your arms downward and bring energy in from earth. You feel that link of heaven and earth between you. So the body is a replica of the universe. And just like heaven has 4 seasons and 5 phases, 9 directions, and 360 days, so human beings have 4 limbs, 5 internal organs, 9 orifices, and 360 joints. And so just like heaven and earth continuously interact and are one integrated system, so the Taoist body is a heaven and earth, powerful, dynamic, integrated whole system. Then the internal functions, and this is from the classic Huangdi Neijing Suwen, the Chinese medical classic. There's different organs have different functions. So the heart is the residence of the ruler. This pure spirit lives there. There's consciousness comes out of the heart. And the lungs are the residence of the high ministers, and you have order and division. The liver is a strategist place where planning and organization come from. The gallbladder is more judgmental, and there's a lot of decision making is associated with the gallbladder, and there actually is a particular point on the gallbladder channel that is needled and activated if people have consistent problems making decisions. The decision making is a gallbladder function. The large intestines is the residence of the teacher, where development and transformations come from. The kidneys are the residence of the more businessmen, where activity and care come from. So you can see how the internal organs are connected, and they also connected to the directions and to the seasons. So the heart is connected to the south and the summer. The lungs are connected to west and the fall. The liver is spring and the direction of the east. So you have all these different cosmic connections of the organs in the body, and they also have a lot of psychological and life skill type functions. So everything needs to work together smoothly and harmoniously for all these different aspects to work properly. So here we have a chart of the 5 organs associated with something called the 5 phases. If you're familiar with Chinese medicine, you may know this under the name element. We don't use that term anymore because elements in the Greek and Indian sense are solid, firm building blocks of the world, whereas in the Chinese system, these entities are prescribing phases, they're prescribing dynamic aspects of the ongoing flow of yin and yang. And so we have 5 yin organs, which is here called organ 1. Organ 1 is the yin organ, is a storage organ. Organ 2 are yang organ, which means they're more dynamic, more transformative organs. So we have 5 of these, and then we have 5 that match the more transformative part, digestive part. And then the senses get associated with these 5. And the cosmology that goes beyond that gives you the yin and yang phase. So from a smaller, lesser, minor type yang, the world moves through bigger, greater, major yang into a yin-yang balance phase, then through minor yin to major yin and back to minor yang. And so each of the phases are associated with directions, colors, and seasons, so that throughout there are dynamic practices that are connected to this. So practices where you're facing certain directions and then bring the green energy of the direction east that is associated with the phase wood, visualize this and feel it and move it into your body and then locate it into the liver, which is a very Daoist form of visualization, where longevity techniques take on this Taoist dimension, where you're increasing longevity, but you're also opening to the universe. And ideally, that's the kind of thing you emphasize in the spring. So we do have seasonal practices for each of the different organs. Here's a chart that shows you the dynamic interaction. The arrows on the outside, on the periphery of this system, show you the productive function, how earth produces metal, metal produces water, water produces wood, wood produces fire, and fire produces earth again. And the arrows in the center is what's called the controlling function, so that metal controls wood, wood controls earth, earth controls water, and so on and so forth. And this interaction is important um, because you do want all of them to function smoothly and to flow in that productive cycle. That is the natural cycle. But if you have issues with one or the other, you can use the controlling patterns to impact and modify one or the other of these organs. And so any of the organs, the tendency is that if one is imbalanced, then the whole cycle gets out of whack. And so very typically you have an excess of flow of qi that's too fast in one organ, and a deficiency, a flow of qi that's too slow and insufficient in a matching organ. So very often, for example, the spleen and the spleen and liver, which are in this relationship, or spleen and lungs, have this relationship. So there's not enough in the spleen, and there's too much in the next one. So we will look at that in some more detail in the workshop, and the practices will help to balance out the entire system. Then so we can think of the 5 organs as the horizontal structure of the Taoist body. In addition, there is a vertical structure which focuses on something called elixir fields. And we have those in the head, the chest, and the abdomen. And the head, the energy center in the head is called the Niwan Palace and matches heaven, and the power associated with it is spirit. The energy center in the chest is called the Scarlet Palace. It's related to the heart and the solar plexus. It links to the human realm, and it's pure qi or vital energy that is generated here and that resides here. And in the abdomen, connected to earth, we have the ocean of qi and essence, or also called the gate of destiny. And this vital essence resides here. So we have essence, energy, and spirit. And in a lot of internal alchemy Taoist practice, you're transforming vital essence into vital energy and then into pure spirit. And as such, you merge with Tao. Translating this into Western terminology, the head, higher energy level there is the brain, where you have evaluations and reactions, different kinds of emotions. In the chest, in the solar black plexus, there's the thymus gland and relations of the heart, which is also responsible for the immune system. And then in the abdomen, we have the belly brain or enteric nervous system, where the intuition resides. So all of these 3 get nurtured, and there's a practices that interact and open the link between the 3 and strengthen those elixir fields. So to conclude, we nourish life with the longevity techniques in this complex Taoist body world with the organs and the elixir fields, in order to, by activating energy flow throughout the entire body. We're engaging a lot of positivity and engage positively with the different parts in the body. We send good energy into the body. We create good relationships with the outside world. We have a strong self and a strong immune system, and we create a protective field. So our energy is not just in the body, but we allow it to radiate outside and create this Wei Qi, means protective energy, a field that allows us to be protected, but also to radiate positivity into the environment. And that concludes this presentation.
All right. Thank you so much, Livia. So if anybody has any questions, you can pop them into the chat, or we can open it up if anyone wants to talk it out. So we've got one question here. How much of the workshop will be practical, Livia?
The whole workshop is practical. You have about a 20-minute presentation and then a half hour of practice and then a little break and then again. So it's a lot of it is it's very, very practical.
Great, great. Is there any other questions or anything anyone has for Livia? Feel free to unmute yourself and speak up if anyone's got any questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap up and call it a day. All good. Right. All right. So yeah, just to remind everyone, the workshop that we've got, 5th of April to the 6th. So weekend workshop here in Sydney with Livia. Very much looking forward to having you join us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we hope to see some of you there. Thank you very much for today, Livia.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you for having me and thank you for joining us. Thank you.